Today, let's talk about the Second Amendment. Now, some time ago on a news broadcast, these two gentlemen were speaking, and they were talking about the AR-15, and one said to the other, said, "You don't need an AR-15 for hunting." Well, that very well may be true. But when we're talking about the Second Amendment, we're not talking about hunting. We're talking about war. We're talking about conflict. Nothing could be further from hunting. About a year ago, I penned a little paper in a Facebook discussion, which I'm going to recycle now, entitled, "The Second Amendment does not grant the right to bear arms. It confirms the people already have that right." And that's important to remember. So I'm going to read some of this. The Second Amendment says, let's first establish what it says, "A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed." Now, this amendment, I believe, is two parts in a single sentence. I've got part one, part two. Now, part one establishes the why, the WHY. The why. It says that a well-ordered militia being necessary to security of a free state. Now, that's the why. Now, we can discuss what is meant by well-regulated. But in any event, it does not diminish or take away from the people the right to keep and bear arms. Now, and we'll see that in part two. Now, part two. Part two establishes, rather, the who and what, which is the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The who is the people, and the what is the right of the people to keep and bear arms. Now, the Second Amendment does not grant that right. That's very important. The Second Amendment does not grant that right. It confirms that the right already belongs to the people. The Second Amendment sets forth that this right to keep and bear arms, which is already invested in the people, shall not be infringed. Very important. It does not grant a right. It gives you a why that it's important for the people to keep and bear arms. Then it says that this right shall not be infringed. Very important. Now, a summation. The Second Amendment writers show clearly their intent when they phrased a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. It is to ensure that every American will be able to join the fight in a moment's notice. To imply that our National Guard is the militia equivalent today is to only prove how complacent the citizenry has become in believing that we can never be invaded again by a foreign power. The National Guard is a finite fighting force, but the whole of the American citizens coming together would be tremendous. The militia. The militia of the Revolution was associated with the state, and even in the simplest form, each state today should maintain in each county a means of calling up those willing to join forces together as a militia, and therefore be able to focus their efforts and cause them to become a well-regulated and ordered. I think that would establish a well-regulated and ordered militia. It's not someone who meets all the time, but you are prepared to fight. You are prepared to join forces, just like they did in the Revolution. The Second Amendment was never established to grant a right, insomuch as the word grant is never used. The Second Amendment is to ensure that the previously existing right for the people to keep and bear arms shall not be taken away. It's not very complicated. It's very simple, not very complicated. You already have the right. Now, what do you think about that? Today, let us continue our discussion on the Second Amendment, and let's talk about what it means. Now, we do not want to let the GLDs in Washington to define it for us. Now, that stands for the Godless Liberal Democrats. in Washington. We don't want the GLDs in Washington to define the Second Amendment for us. We don't want them to define it as about hunting. We do not want them to define it about being able to protect yourself from home invasion. Because if it becomes, by that definition, then you greatly weaken your argument. Because it may be decided that you don't need the best weapon of the day to defend your home, or you don't need the best weapon of the day for hunting. But what we need to do is just stay with what the Second Amendment says. And let's try to understand that. Because so often, I don't think people do. But it says a well-regulated militia is necessary for the protection of a free state. And because of that, then the people's rights shall not be infringed to bear arms. So you already have the right to bear arms. The Second Amendment is there to protect you from the government that would come in and try to limit you. And it absolutely uses the most powerful word, militia, that it could. A militia. Now imagine this for a moment. If it were to become necessary, if you were to get a call from the governor of the state you're in, that we need all the able-bodied people with weapons that are willing to join with the other groups in certain places in the county, then at that point you could take the best weapon you have, if you're willing and able, and you could join forces. You would become part of a well-regulated militia. Now, frankly, I do believe that to be a well-regulated militia, it has to be tied somehow to some kind of civil authority at some level. I mean, if everyone's out doing their own thing, I don't know what good they'll be. You know, if something happened major, they might be able to protect the folks they're around, but to actually be part of a group, it would be very hard if they're not part of some kind of local authority. And I'm thinking even at the county level, that you know where to assemble if you are needed to protect the United States of America. Now, if the Second Amendment being about the militia, then that is a necessity that you have the best weapon of the day. If it's the AR-15 now, that's what you need to have. Now, what that does for you, though, the Second Amendment grants you the right to have it just in case you're ever needed to join up with others to form the militia. But you have it, so you can protect your home with it. And if you are that good of a hunter, you can use the AR-15 in hunting. So the important thing is to remember, what is the strength of the Second Amendment? And it's much more powerful when you keep it to a militia, being able to fight in battle. Is you need the best weapon of the day. It can't be concluded by some judge that it's too dangerous for you to have. Well, I got to have a weapon that's going to be able to fight the enemy. And AR-15 is a good one for now. There may be something better in a few years. And at that point, you need that weapon. So don't let the GLDs, the godless liberal Democrats in Washington, define for you what the Second Amendment means by trying to convince you it's about hunting, or it's about just simply about your own personal protection. Because you weaken your argument greatly. But when you make it about being able to fight in a conflict, then you need the best weapon. And that's what the Second Amendment does for you. It gives you the best weapon. Now, what do you think about that?